Hey, I would love to talk for a few minutes about Matthew 5:20. The words of Jesus, "For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, those were the religious leaders of Israel, unless your righteousness exceeds that kind of Pharisee righteousness, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Those probably were shocking words for people to hear when Jesus spoke them. Like the scribes and the Pharisees were known for their show of righteousness and their goodness, their ability to keep the law. They were like the paragons of law keeping. They were like the really good people. And Jesus says, like, unless you are better than them, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Probably could be kind of depressing as well. What are we supposed to do with that? You know, it's pretty common to hear people say, I think I'm a pretty good person. I feel like I deserve to go to heaven. You know, I've done good things. I feel like I'm a pretty good person. And these words, I think, that Jesus speaks really bring us up short and should bring everyone up short when he says something like this. It's because he has a different framework for what it means to be good. And he outlines that framework in like what follows. So if you're interested in reading more about what he says, go to Matthew 5 and begin in verse 21. And he shows us just what it means to actually be good. We get caught up in our humanness with like thinking it's good to just like do lots of good stuff and, you know, maybe avoid certain bad things. And what Jesus outlines for us is that in order to be with God, our goodness has to go all the way to the core of who we are. Goodness and purity are deeper matters of internal thoughts, motives, desires, all those kinds of things. And that's why he talks about things like anger and lust and says, like, you know, you're used to hearing that, you know, you should not murder a person. And so if you don't murder a person, you know, you could imagine that that means you're good if you avoid murder. And you're used to hearing that you should not commit adultery. So that means that if you are not committing adultery, well, then you're doing pretty good. But what he does is he shows us that the command goes much deeper than that. It goes into motives. Like if you even think a thought about someone that is harmful to them, you think like that person's a fool, that person's terrible, I don't like them. If you like deface the image of God in another person, you are judged by that as being not good. That's an evil thought. And he says the same thing about lust, like just a look, you know, unfaithfulness to God and unfaithfulness to your spouse is not just a matter of not committing adultery. Even adultery can happen with a look and a desire. And so he shows us that we have to be good down to the very core of who we are in order to be with God. And he's not kidding. He's not joking. He presents the truth, because what he's really presenting is himself as the answer to our problem. That our problem is that none of us can be good all the way to the core of our being. But that's why Jesus came, because he could and he was and is good all the way to the core of his being. So the only way we can enter the kingdom of heaven is by turning away from our own deception that we could ever be good enough and turning towards Jesus in faith and accepting the goodness that he offers to us. It's his own goodness. Because the words he speaks are true. I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, that is, unless you are good to the core, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus came to do that for us.